Hello, I'm Angeline Ong. Welcome to your week ahead starting the 11th of September 2023. Now, it's a big week for inflation. Everyone's counting down to that US inflation number, but we have plenty of data points coming out ahead of that. Australia is out with consumer confidence figures and also business confidence to boot. Out of the UK, look out for the unemployment rate and the ZEW out of Germany, and oil and energy, a big one that we've been looking out for because of Chevron, strike action, and also increasing volatility in the energy space. API crude oil inventories will be an interesting data point. Meanwhile, we've got monthly GDP numbers from the UK and industrial production and trade balance data too on Wednesday. Industrial production figures out of the Eurozone might be an interesting one given we've got the ECB in action also in the coming week. Consumer price numbers, this is the big one that I was telling you about because this figure is what everyone's waiting on to give us some sort of clue as to where the Fed is going to head to next in terms of interest rates. And of course, the EIA crude oil inventories as well. Meanwhile, on Thursday, we've got unemployment rate figures out of Australia and that ECB interest rate decision that I spoke of earlier, plus US retail sales and producer price index data, along with initial jobless claims data too. And of course, coming up at the end of the week, China's out with industrial production figures. Now, remember we had those weak services figures out of China, indicating that perhaps the stimulus there, the recent stimulus that has been unleashed has not helped to boost the economy as thought. Retail sales figures will also give us a sense of consumption and whether weak consumption is improving there. And look out for industrial production figures and the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index as well, and the Baker Hughes oil rig count. Now we're joined all the way from Chicago by Anthony Batista, co-host of Tasty Live, part of IG Group. Bat, thank you so much for joining us so early in your day. As I mentioned earlier, the market is waiting on this inflation data, but there's so much in the mix as well. Oil volatility, the fact that earlier today, Bank of America, its global research team came up with numbers saying that for the first time since September 6th, they've seen outflows out of tech. What do you think is going to be the key market moving event next week?
Well, you mentioned some good buzzwords without actually mentioning recession. They talked a lot in the U.S. here about recession. I think every time they use that word, it's usually a signal to say that there's going to be no recession. You know, it's not one of those things when you least expect it, and everybody's talking about it. So I don't think it'll really come to fruition. Besides, they always tell you you are in a recession after you're out of a recession. But you did mention oil, and oil is at yearly highs, all-time highs for the last year or so on a calendar year basis, trading around $87.50. I think that's the canary in the coal mine. I think if oil is looking to bring the market a little bit lower and maybe taking some of that money out of the tech sector too, people trying to chase the next big thing, because you had a bunch of tech stocks, as you mentioned, going a little bit lower by about 5 to 8% so far in the last week and a half or so. But you haven't had confirmation of a recession from gold. Gold has stayed steady to sideways to a little bit lower. So volatility in oil is good. Volatility in the market is actually a little bit low. It's near the lows for the year as measured by /VX here in the U.S. That's the volatility future on VIX, the fear index. It's trading around $15.50, which is just about $1 off its low, and its a median number is closer to 19. So we're on the low end of equity volatility. We're percolating in oil volatility, and I think oil loses in this one. I think oil is maybe getting a little bit frothy or toppy here at $87.50. As you know, nobody knows what the next day is going to bring, but it seems to be the only one that wants to bring the market a little bit lower, or kind of bringing the fear into the market. There's no other fear, at least in the U.S., in the market.
That it's interesting that you talk about tech stocks coming off, because we've been watching that our side too, and NVIDIA, as you rightly said, Apple, they're all kind of coming off. But having said that, is this actually an entry point? I mean, everyone is exposed, whether you like it or not, to Apple, whether you're a consumer or whether it's through your pension fund. Where are these stocks headed? Are we seeing AI fatigue offset all that sort of enthusiasm that we saw earlier in the year? Is it time to get in instead of out?
Well, Apple made its highs back in August. It seems like so long ago, but it was only a month ago when it flirted with $200. It's 177 right now. So if you thought you kind of missed the move in the market, and Apple has a 0.68 correlation to the overall market because it is basically in every ETF. It is basically in every portfolio manager's portfolio. So goes Apple, so goes the market. Personally, I'm optimistic on future pricing for Apple. Anytime you have China come out, which you have to take any news out of China, I think, with a grain of salt. But if they come out with bad news, it must be horrible, right? Because they pretty much own the news market there, and they usually don't like to paint a bad picture. But I think Apple's taken enough of a beating. I would like to buy it on a dip.
Thanks very much, Bat. And Apple, of course, accounting for a significant chunk of its sales coming out of China. That was Anthony Batista, co-host of Tasty Live, part of IG Group. Now, let's taking a look at some of the other events out next week. Of course, Apple, the big set piece there is its Cupertino unveiling of its new products next week. But we also have many other big names like Oracle coming out with its first quarter numbers. Oracle, fascination there will be what it says about all that money it's spent on NVIDIA chips. Some reports saying billions. It spent billions of dollars on NVIDIA chips and even more on CPUs from Ampere Computing, a chip startup it has invested in. Later on in the week, we've also got Fever Tree Drinks out with first half earnings. Gym Group as well. Fever Tree, as you remember, did really well during the lockdown period because of all the mixers, people drinking at home. However, it's come off slightly now, so it'll be interesting to see what it says about the future and coming few months. Tullow Oil and Redrow also out with earnings on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, keep an eye out for Adobe and Kier Group. Adobe also one to watch in terms of tech and AI. And finally, on Friday, we get H&M. This is the retailer that is underpinning the fast retail fashion industry out with third quarter sales figures. So a very busy week on the corporate and also the economic front.